Usually, it's as good as it got.
Okay.
You gotta go, Gary? Get
Right.
this stuff in the room over here.
How are you today, Julie?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Okay, we're ready.
Is Danny connected yet?
Need to wait on Danny, hold on.
Gary, we're on a little bit of delay in there. You got about a good 10 minutes difference?
No, about 60 seconds.
Okay. I just caught myself standing here before I even went in there, and we were having difficulty looking it up for about a couple minutes. Yep. To do. Work session. forward. So they had it, but it's starting to get this way behind.
Ready. That, the planning board meeting for August 28th is now back in session. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and understanding as we worked out our technical challenges. On to tonight's agenda. The first item up, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody would please stand, face the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the invocation. Mr. Moss, if once again we could call on your services.
Okay. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come and gather here tonight on behalf of the town. We'd like to ask for your blessing over this meeting, and we'd like to ask for your guidance and direction in the decisions we make tonight. May everything we do and say be pleasing to you. For it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Next item is approval of the minutes from the August 24th, 2020 Planning Board.
Here are no corrections. I make a motion we approve.
We have a motion for approval with no corrections. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are adopted. Now for the August 25th, 2020 special joint work session meeting minutes. Shorter.
Mr. Chairman, here are no corrections. I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion for approval. Is there a second?
A second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Moving on to item number 5, case MA 20-01 Hopper Communities, UDO Map Amendment to Zone 91.39 acres from Wake County R30 to Roseville Residential 3 Conditional Zoning District. And because we don't deal with conditional zoning very often, I understand that the part of the staff presentation is going to include at least a brief overview of what's involved with that. So
Yes,
with that, Julie, the floor is yours.
thank you. Good evening. So MA 20-01 Hopper Communities is a rezoning case that has, or map amendment for MA map amendment. It's a rezoning case for an area that is located in county zoning and it is outlined on this map. I did not turn this to the laser pointer. Hang on. Here we go. In the red, so it is these two parcels here, better shown on this map without the aerial behind it. You've got Mitchel Mill Road and you've got Rolesville Road. Across the street here you have Kayla's. Up here you have the Point. And then Hopper Communities here, the one in question for tonight. The proposed development is, again, for medium density residential, is what the land use plan calls for, and you'll see what the proposed use will be. The current land use and existing conditions, single family and agricultural uses are currently on the properties. They are located outside the ETJ. They are county zoned for residential 30 or R30. The surrounding parcels are county R30 and the Roseville RMPUD. The RMPUD is Kayla's Falls across the street where we just saw. In the UDO, the intent of the R3 district is principal use for high-density, pedestrian-friendly residential, and discourages uses that would be a nuisance to residential uses or detrimental to the quiet nature of the area. There were neighborhood meetings held. The first neighborhood meeting was held on February 17th, 2020, and just last week, September 23rd, another neighborhood meeting was held, 2020. The minutes have been included in your agenda packets for the February 17th, 2020 meeting, and you have an addendum to the packet tonight in front of you for the minutes and attendance record for September 23rd, 2020. The comprehensive plan identifies this area as medium density residential, which is defined as single family, duplexes, townhomes, and multifamily uses. The 3 to 5 dwelling units per gross acre, which is including the open space. So the total area of the tract, the 91.39 acres, will be used for the gross acre to determine the 3 to 5 dwelling units per acre. And the comprehensive plan for medium density residential also calls for limited non-residential uses if it's for a planned unit development. The proposed development is 4.5 units per gross acre. The comprehensive plan continued for this development. The single-family units are proposed as a cap of 297 units on 76 acres, which yields 3.9 units per gross acre. The townhomes have a proposed 120 unit cap for 15 gross acres, which yields 8 units per gross acre. In the UDO section 6.5, it states that the maximum density for R3 is 5 units per gross acre for single family and 8 units per gross acre for townhomes. Combined, that gives you the 4.5 units per gross acre. And the proposal is consistent by having a mix of single-family and townhomes with less than 5 dwelling units per gross acre at 4.5 units per gross acre for the development, and is consistent with the UDO for the maximum density of R3 categories. Other town-approved plans that we have, the 2002 Thoroughfare Plan calls for 3-lane road improvements for Roseville Road and for a new collector street connecting Rolesville Road to Mitchel Mill Road through the development. The comprehensive bicycle plan had no recommendations for this area. The traffic impact analysis monitors the traffic impact analysis in the surrounding area and looked at close by intersections and what the demand from this proposed development would be. You do have an addendum to your agenda packet from the transportation engineer. The original TIA called for a higher density than what is currently being proposed. The addendum in front of you states that the recommendations still stand, even though it is what is being proposed tonight is a lesser units per acre and lesser density than what was in the original TIA. So the TIA recommendations were to monitor Rolesville and Mitchel Mill Road intersection for signalization. On Roseville Road, a full access intersection and a southbound left turn lane with 100 feet of storage and appropriate taper. and on Mitchell Mill Road, a full access intersection with stop controls. And those were the recommendations from the TIA. The TIA was reviewed by the TRC and the Congestion Management, NCDOT. NCDOT Congestion Management states that it meets the criteria for their records and for further review and analysis as the site develops. Because we don't see a lot of conditional zoning requests, we want to point out that a conditional rezoning is a zoning that you are allowed to propose conditions for at the applicant level. The proposed zoning conditions are limited by state and federal legislation and case law, and those conditions, including building design elements, must be voluntarily consented to by the owners of all the property. So in front of you tonight, and in your packet, you do have conditions that were proposed by all the owners of the property. We'll go over those conditions. They are in the PowerPoint. If you have specific questions about the proposed conditions, the applicant is here, and they will be able to discuss why they're proposing those conditions. But want to point out that the zoning conditions are agreed to by the owners, and those were voluntarily consented to by the owners. It's in your packet. The proposed conditions by the applicant are numerous. The total number of dwelling units on this subject shall not exceed 297 dwelling units, and not more than 120 of these dwelling units are permitted to be townhomes. No apartments shall be permitted. They are proposing a Type A landscape buffer that is 20 feet wide to be installed along the subject property's frontage on Rolesville Road and Mitchel Mill Road, and the buffer will be maintained by the Homeowners Association. They're calling for recreational amenities, and in your packet, attached as Exhibit 1, is the layout of where those amenities are going to be. Again, that is just proposed conditions as part of your packet, and the dedication and maintained by Homeowners Association for the proposed subdivision, except for the public greenways. The public greenways will be part of the town of Roseville's responsibility to maintain. A swimming pool and cabana, including changing rooms and restroom, will be constructed prior to the issuance of the 150th building permit, and at least one fenced playground shall be constructed prior to the 150th building permit. At least one fenced dog park, again at the 150th building permit, and the public greenway on a greenway easement at least 25 feet wide with paved trails, and the paved trail should be at least 10 feet wide, will be constructed as generally shown on Exhibit 1 and dedicated to the town of Rolesville, and a multi-purpose path that is private of at least 10 feet shall be provided as shown on Exhibit 1 and dedicated and maintained by the Homeowners Association. They did offer proposed conditions for the transportation improvements, and the transportation improvements were based off of the TIA as was recommended by their engineers, and they went above and beyond with some of the conditions as we'll see here. I went over the TIA recommendations previously, so what we see for Rolesville Road Site Drive 1 is the site access with full movement with one ingress and one egress, provide the stop controls for westbound drive approach, construct a designated southbound left turn lane with at least 100 feet storage and appropriate deceleration and taper. And also they have proposed a condition of providing a designated northbound right turn lane with at least 100 feet of storage and appropriate deceleration and taper as well. For Mitchel Mill Site Drive 2, they have proposed conditions to provide access via full movement intersection with one egress and one egress lane, to provide stop controls for the southbound site drive approach, and to do an eastbound left turn lane with at least 100 feet of storage and appropriate deceleration and taper. So that last condition is proposed but was not recommended as part of the TIA. Transportation improvements, the Roseville Road and Mitchel Mill Road intersection prior to the issuance of the building permit for the 150th dwelling unit. The property owners will contribute $50,000 to the town of Roseville to be used to install a traffic light at the intersection of Mitchel Mill and Roseville Road. Conditions applicable to the single-family homes only. All homes shall include either crawl space foundations or stem wall foundations. Any stem wall foundation shall have a brick or stone veneer on all sides facing a public street. And the minimum square footage for two-story homes shall be 2,200 square feet, and the minimum footage for one-story homes will be 1,600 square feet. Continuing with the single-family homes conditions, a 25-foot wide type A landscape buffer shall be installed adjacent to properties to the north currently owned by Dwight and Carolyn Woodleaf. This buffer shall be located within an easement that may be part of a residential lot. The buffer shall be maintained by the homeowners association. And a 20-foot wide type A landscape buffer shall be installed along the common boundary line with the following properties. The buffer shall be located within an easement that may be part of a residential lot, and the buffer shall be maintained by the HOA. And then there is specific parcels called out in the conditions list of where that type A 20-foot wide landscape buffer will be located. I'm not going to call out each address, but the conditions that are signed by the property owners included in your packet do have these listed. Conditions applicable to townhomes only is no townhome building shall exceed 6 units, and the minimum square footage for townhomes shall be 1,200 square feet. Planning staff finds the request reasonable in the public interest, is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future land use plan with the mix of housing types and density of proposed development. Staff recommends approval of MA 20-01 with conditions as presented. And do you have any questions for me before we bring in the applicant?
Questions from the board for staff?
I had one question on this. Back to this whole rezoning and annexation. It was in here. Let me find my page.
Should be on the last page of that memo.
It was talking about the rezoning won't take effect till we have it annexed. When do we plan on having it annexed?
The annexation and the rezoning case will be heard the same night. Right now, they are scheduled for the November 3rd meeting at the town board. What they'll be doing is they'll be hearing the annexation case, and then they'll be hearing the rezoning case. They'll be making a decision on the annexation case first. If the annexation does not go through, then the rezoning case will not go through as well. If the annexation case goes through, then they can make a decision on the rezoning case. At this time, you can make a recommendation for approval on the fact that the rezoning needs to happen for the annexation case. So if they annex, they have, the town board of commissioners has about 60 days to rezone the annexed parcels. And so what this rezoning case is doing is helping that case go forward for the annexation to, that's what the owners would like to petition the property to be when it's annexed in. So the first step would be to annex, and then the immediate case following that would be to do the rezoning for that.
That will be the R3.
That's what's being proposed by this application, yes.
Board members, just as a note, Exhibit 1, which is in the staff package, is a conceptual plan. So except to the extent that the conditions reference that conceptual plan, as I understand it, that lot configuration that you see is not a condition of this zoning approval. We may hear more from the applicant, but as my understanding is that the conditions that have been offered that relate to Exhibit 1 are the only things that are set in stone.
Thank you.
All right.
Next up is the petitioner.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board. My name is Beth Trejos. I'm an attorney with Nelson Mullins, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Hopper Communities to request approval of the zoning case that's before you to the R3 Conditional Use District. I've got with me several folks. Bill Harrell with Hopper Communities is in the lobby. Also, Pat Barbo, who is a civil engineer with Timmons, working on this project, and Josh Ranke with Ramey Kemp, he's the traffic engineer on this project. All are available to answer questions from you. I think Mr. Harrell would like to speak to you when I'm done, and then, the remainder of the group will be available for any questions that you might have. Thank staff for the thorough job they did in presenting our case to you. It will make my presentation much shorter than I had intended it to be, and I'm sure you will appreciate that. This property owned by the Wheeler and Fowler families is a 91.5 acres roughly. They would like to become a part of the town of Rolesville, so they have petitioned annexation and are pursuing this zoning in furtherance of their effort to become part of the town. They expect that through the development of their property that they'll pay town of Roseville impact fees, and that their future residents of this property will pay taxes to the town. This site is directly across the street from Callis Falls and just down the road from the Point. So the town is already growing in this area, and it's planned to grow in this area under the recently adopted 2017 comprehensive plan. There's a little map, I think, at your place that looks like this. It just kind of shows you the orange is Callis Falls. The green is the property that's before you tonight, the Wheeler Fowler property, and to the north here is the Point. So you can see how the town is already growing in this area, and what we're proposing fits in with what is already planned to come. I know y'all have seen and heard from us many times over the course of the past few months related to this project. The proposal that's before you tonight is significantly reduced from what we initially came forward with, and you heard about in the context of the text change. What is being proposed now, rather than 370 total homes, is 297 homes. Of those, 177 would be detached single-family homes, and 120 would be attached townhomes. We are meeting the newly adopted R3 requirements. That's the minimum 10,000 square foot lots, the 10-foot side yard setbacks, no more than 15 acres of townhomes. As you heard from staff, I know this is kind of a new beast for you, but the conditional zoning district does include the addition of conditions, and we've got, I think, what have we got? 4 pages of conditions in the packet that I know Julie went through in great detail, so I will not repeat that, but that show the detailed commitment that the property owner and the developer are making as a part of this project. As Mr. Neal said, it does include a concept plan that is referenced for certain elements in the conditions. We did that candidly because we keep having to change the concept plan, and we've done a number of iterations. We started the project with the plan fully incorporated as if this were an RMPD, but because of the many changes, we just included it as an exhibit, recognizing that this process is different than the RMPD process. Throughout this process, we have met many times with our neighbors. Some of them are here tonight to speak with you still about the project. But we have made changes to our proposal based on those comments that we have heard, including one I'd like to highlight. We would like to ask you that we not be required to extend Taviston Court, which is an existing stub south of the property, from the Woods Crossings neighborhood that was intended to connect into our neighborhood. It's, the street is existing, stubbed out to our property. Our neighbors have said they prefer that connection not be made. It's shown on our concept plan. If the town requires it of us, we will make it. But it's not necessary for our project, and so if, we told our neighbors we would ask you not to require that, and we are making good on that commitment. The other commitments relative to recreational areas, buffers, commitments regarding the square footage of homes, are all things that have been added based on feedback we've received through this process. And there are substantial buffers that are committed really all around the site, 20-foot wide type A buffers, precisely what was asked by our neighbors. So your professional planning staff has told you that in their estimation, this meets the requirements of your comprehensive plan. We would say to you that we believe that this will fit in well with what is happening already in this area of town, and that this developer and these landowners would like to be a part of your town and plan to be good neighbors, to the surrounding landowners as well. So we would ask for your support. I'm going to ask Mr. Harrell to come in, and if I can, I'd like to stay during his presentation, and then we're happy to answer any questions or bring in our other experts, our civil engineer and our traffic engineer, if there are particular questions for the items in their purview. Taviston Court. It's to the south. Julie, I don't know if you can show the aerial photo. As I said, it's an existing street that is stubbed out.
If I may interrupt you just for a second, let me address that question. When Taviston Court was put in by the county, they put a street stub to the adjoining property. I don't know if there was intent of additional phase or et cetera, but there is a street stub. And town policy is when there's a street stub or connectivity is to be encouraged. That section, and I know the residents in there are very concerned, but they only have one access in. This would give them another option of being another access out to Rolesville Road if their intersection gets blocked. So it's a question not only just of a connection, but also of public safety, to have the ability to get to that neighborhood or to do so. I know there's not many homes back there, but that's the basic question comes in when you make a request like this. I'm not doing a connection, is what's the impacts to the safety of that neighborhood, because this is the time to get the connection. If you take that out, there'll be a house put in there blocking it. So that's really the bottom line. Overall policy from the comp plan as well as the UDO encourages connectivity. We always try to extend street stubs with new development to adjoining properties for the future. And this is the reverse of it, that this property does have the street stub and it's just a short connection. I know that the residents out there have concern about traffic coming onto their side from their neighborhood, coming from this development. And that's just what it is. I guess my question is, you're offering that as a request? Did I make an understanding you're requesting to support the neighborhood of not doing the Travis Lane?
Yes, we have said we would come forward and ask not to be required to do that. We do recognize, the long-term implications. We'd be happy to dedicate the right-of-way and not build the street, so there wasn't a house blocking it in the future. And if you require it of us, we're happy to build the street. But we promised our neighbors that we would bring that request forward, and we want to do that.
Well, we don't want to do a paper street. We're going to make that clear. We don't want to do a paper street for a future extension, and then the question is who's going to pay for it. And like I said, this is the time when this development occurs to do the extension. If it's determined that not to do it, then that's a decision moving forward, either as a recommendation of this planning board, because it's not technically a condition at this point, but can they offer it as a condition, Mr. Attorney?
The condition could be offered by the property owner it would be a condition not to make the connection. That is, the rezoning would not permit the connection to be made. It would be a limitation. The question is whether that conforms to the ordinance and whether that would still receive the planning staff's recommendation so that the planning board could decide whether it would receive their recommendation to pass on to the Board of Commissioners.
So it is not a condition now. We bring it forward to you because we said we would. If there is support, we will we will change our conditions to address that. But we understand both sides of the issue, and we leave the decision as to the appropriateness to the town.
I should have asked it. Are there any questions about that idea?
I think because the street, right now, this is, I think it's Tavis Wood Way that comes in, or
Taviston Court.
goes to Taviston Court, right? So the street coming off from Roseville Road is Tavis Wood, I believe.
Yes, yeah, and then the connection is Taviston Court, so.
I guess we're just trying to say, keep the two neighborhoods separated and not connecting at that point. We have a main thoroughfare into the new proposed neighborhood on here as far as access this Tavis Wood, Taviston Court, exactly how we have ever since it was built, so.
That's correct, Mr. Lawrence. So the wording of that condition is probably something I would want to think about to make sure the logic of it is correct. But essentially, we would be prohibiting, or I should say, the applicant with their rezoning case as a condition would prohibit future development of their site with a connection to that stub.
Our time to discuss this connection.
Yep. Planning board can discuss things at its pleasure. That's sort of the setting.
Why don't we let her finish
How would-
with her presentation, if you don't mind, and then we can discuss this item? I just want to get clarity at this moment. I didn't mean to jump right into that. But let her move on to the rest of the things, and then
And Mr. Harrell,
we can discuss all of this when you get into deliberations.
Mr. Harrell with Hopper Communities just has a few quick remarks, and then we will just be available for questions.
Here he is. Come on in, Bill.
Sorry.
Okay to take this off? Fine.
Yeah.
Kind of muffled.
You're 4 or 6 feet away. You're good.
You're about 12. Good evening. I'm Bill Harrell, Hopper Communities, 2403 Medway Drive, Raleigh. I'd like to thank the members of this planning board for their patience and attentiveness throughout this process. We come to you tonight with our request for a rezoning from a county zoning of R30 to the Roseville zoning district R3 that was recently amended. First, a little history on this journey. We first met with surrounding property owners back on Valentine's Day this year to discuss our initial proposal. At that time, our plan called for a total of 370 units, no buffers adjacent to existing residential, as the UDO does not require homes to buffer other homes. A minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet, a minimum lot width of 50 feet, and 5-foot setbacks, and a street stub to the adjacent woods crossing subdivision. Since then, we've met with the surrounding property owners 4 times. And as a response to neighbors' concerns, we've significantly decreased density. We've added type A landscape buffers adjacent to existing homes and along Rolesville and Mitchel Mill Roads. Increased our minimum lot size. We've increased our side setbacks and agreed not to extend Taviston Court stub from Woods Crossing if permitted by the Board of Commissioners. As our plan stands tonight, since the very beginning and after numerous meetings with adjacent neighbors, planning board and town board, our density has been decreased by over 20%. Our minimum lot size has been increased to 10,000 square feet, an increase of 67%, as required by the recently amended R3 district. The comprehensive plan recently approved in 2017 indicates a recommended density of 3 to 5 units per acre for this entire surrounding area. Our current rezoning proposal has an overall net density of 3.2 units per acre. Roseville's UDO defines density in 3 separate categories: low, medium, and high density. Low density is defined as 1 to 2 units per acre. Medium density is defined by a density of 3 to 5 units per acre. And high density is defined by a density of 6 to 12 units per acre. With our current density of 3.2 units per acre, our plan is at the very low end of the density range for medium density. We request your support of the proposed rezoning, and I appreciate your time. I'm here for any questions.
the landowners, but I think what I understand is y'all are going to ask questions of the development team and then move to those in favor and those against. But
There's one question for you, if you don't mind. Does somebody else have a question? You mentioned 3.5 units per acre right now, correct?
Get closer
oh,
to the
oh,
mic.
I'm sorry.
3.5 units per acre is what you're
So,
referring
so our,
talking about 4.5 on the previous presentation. Was there a,
What I did was I lumped the single family and the townhomes together for the gross overall. But he is correct, when you do the single family on the single family acres, our math is just a little bit different, but I rounded. So it's still in the 3 to 4 range.
it's actually 3.2. Just simply take the total number of units of 297, which is the combined between the townhomes and the single family. You combine those two together and just multiply it down times the acreage is 3.2. Or divide, yeah.
And then the other question for the board before you said you had your traffic engineer here.
We're here to answer any
Now,
questions
I
you
guess
might
the
have.
question is, you've got any questions for the traffic engineer in case questions come up during the deliberations of pro and con about traffic? Do you want to hear from them?
Read it right out here as well.
You don't have to, just alternate, just asking a question if you do.
Just a general question for whoever is best equipped to handle it. Are you looking at different phases of construction?
More than likely, there'll be at least 2 phases of construction. And in the first phase, I would anticipate a phase of single family and a phase of townhomes going in first. Correct.
Any feel for what kind of schedule you'd be looking at? You know, how far out you'd be looking for the
To start construction on the actual, like, moving dirt and clearing and grubbing, I would say would probably be a year out.
Okay. And how long do you think till the first CO after that?
I would say if we're on schedule for a 12-month, after rezoning, we go through CDs and design, so we'd be looking at probably another 8 to 12 months of development work, and then to have finished lots ready to start construction. So I'd say 2 years out.
another question, I know I read it in here somewhere, but around the Tavis Court and Arbor Rose, those lots are gonna be no less than 10,000 square feet, right? Is that correct?
Yes, and with the revised R3, all of the single-family lots will be at least 10,000 square feet.
And there's, what, minimum a 20-foot buffer?
There's a 20-foot type A buffer adjacent to all of along the boundary of the entire property. So adjacent to the streets and adjacent to the existing homes will be a 20-foot wide type A planted buffer.
I actually do have a quick question for our director here. As far as the zoning districts go, any developer coming in need to qualify for 3 out of the 5 zoning, is that right? I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. There's an R1, R2, R3, mixed use.
Residential PUD,
That's a residential PUD. I gotcha. All right. I see. So
residential planned unit development, excuse me. That's the name
gotcha.
of it.
All right. Just for, again, some
There's only 4
edification.
districts we have.
4 districts. Okay. And the only district I see here is R3. Is that correct? There's no other districts in this community?
Just the R3, that's correct.
Or the residential PUD. And one of the issues is meeting all the criteria of the residential PUD.
Right, and the reason we chose R3 and went through the text change process was because we understood that the town desired not to have R and PUD. So that's why we chose the R3 district.
Okay. I just wanted to kind of get some clarity. Why is the entire map R3? Why the entire subdivision is R3? Why not include some diversity? Again, I could be saying this wrong. I'm not sure.
If it was any other district, it would be larger lots.
Larger lots, correct.
Okay, R1 is 20,000 square feet, R2 is 15,000 square feet.
Gotcha.
R3 is 10,000 square feet for single family.
Okay.
So you're 20, 15, 10. This is at 10.
Understood. So I guess my question to Mr. Harold is, I don't know who comes up with the decision, is why isn't there an R1 or R2? Maybe I'm missing it. Why have you included that in the subdivision? Why is it all R3, just townhomes and single families? Is that your vision? Is that your vision? Is that what you took
Well, so we started out with our PUD.
Yes, I
and that was our plan, and because the point had our PUD, and they had a mix of, different lot widths, different product types, single-family detached and townhome attached units. Same thing with Kalis Falls. And so, and through the Kalis Falls process, then the town strongly discouraged, almost took our PUD away from availability to as an option for us for zoning. So that left the R1, the R2, and the R3. Well, the R1 doesn't allow townhomes. The R2 doesn't allow townhomes. The R3 does, but it didn't allow single family, which is a little unusual. So that's why the text amendment to allow single family.
I get all of that. I guess where I'm going with this is, it just came down to your decision to make this all R3.
Well, and I think that was
Why
guided.
don't we have some R1s and some R2s in there? Again, it could be a dumb question. I apologize.
No, it's not. No,
that's
but
not a
I
dumb
think
question.
it's,
What is the vision
I
here?
think it's, we look to the comprehensive plan, right? And initially, what does the town say it wants in this location?
Sure.
And here, the comprehensive plan says we want medium-density residential, we want 3 to 5 units to the acre, which, is with 20,000 square foot lots, which are essentially half-acre lots, or 15,000 square foot lots, which, as a minimum, which are essentially third acres, it's hard to achieve, the kind of density that's contemplated. And then the mix of uses, which are also mentioned in the comprehensive plan. So from a flexibility perspective, that was our desire. And of course, we looked across the street and saw Kalis Falls had been approved with lots as small as 6,000 square feet, directly across the street. And up the road at the point as well, there are smaller lots, I think some even as small as 4,000 square feet. But, so we saw the diversity in lot size, we saw the comp plan, and thought it made sense to come forward with this request.
Okay. So if you wanted to add R1 and R2s, you could.
So it's a minimum lot size.
Okay.
There's a significant number of lots, so that's a minimum, that's correct. So
Yeah.
the significant number of lots that are above 10,000 square feet. That's just a baseline number.
Gotcha.
Now, let me point out that when we're discussing all this about lot size and everything, that's not part of the condition.
Sure.
Other than what's in there. Right now, the minimum is 10,000 square feet. All lots have to have the width, the setbacks, and the square footage of the R3 district for the new residential single family. And it must meet those minimums.
Thank you.
Going back to hypothetical or hoped for building schedule, a lot of the conditions are hinge on the 150th dwelling unit permit. Any idea how far out that would be from when you first break ground? Roughly.
From when we first break ground on site work,
Yeah.
that's about, it's right at half the project, so I would say 2 years till we get to our first vertical home going up. So I would say add 3 years to that. Probably so from today, probably a solid 5 years.
That's for the 150th home or permit, I believe, right? That's roughly 5 years before you get to that.
From now. I just, that's a guess, pending obviously market conditions. And
did the rest of your staff want to need to present anything, or are they just available if we have questions?
Well, just available for questions.
Okay.
And if it's okay, we'll wait in the lobby, and then if you have questions of us, you can call us in. Is that?
Actually, I need you, is there room in the community center?
I don't know, because they told us to go to the lobby first, so we haven't been in the community center. I'm not sure.
I'd rather you not be waiting in the lobby.
Okay.
Yeah, there's room in there. Y'all go ahead and wait in the community center.
I'm gonna grab my bag and get the rest of the team, and then we'll.
While we have this break and before we open the public hearing, again, I would caution us reading too much into Exhibit 1. That is purely one way that these conditions in this zoning could be built, save the items such as the Greenway, where that condition is in the zoning case and its location is generally set as shown in Exhibit 1. Everything else is purely illustrative as one way you could get this many units on that size site, if that helps for how you think about it.
Also, let me just point out, everybody was asking about Jim Schmaltz. He just texted or emailed me right before the meeting. He's having an outage. You know, he's an IT.
Sorry, your mask is
I'm
muffled
sorry,
a
let
little
me
bit.
take that. Jim Schmaltz just emailed us a few minutes ago explaining his absence tonight. You know, he's an IT person and dealing with his work. They're having an outage, so he's having to focus on work right now.
Understood.
Apologize for not being here.
Understood. So at this point, we'll open up to the public comments. We're up.
Chair's choice.
Pardon?
Chair's choice.
Up to 10 people have signed up, I believe, and maximum 3 minutes each. We're going to start with those who have signed up pro approval, and those against the approval afterwards. And then we can circle back around and further discuss and ask more questions as they come up. A couple have already started popping into my mind.
Mr. Chair, before we get started on the public discussion, can we take a brief recess?
Sure. My
I think we might be
apologies.
here for a while.
We will take a 5-minute recess.
Turn the mic on.
And we will, right now, it is about 16 after, at 21 after, we will resume. We are recessed. So if we could bring in the first speaker if you could come in and please state your name and address and be limited to 3 minutes.
Certainly. My name is Jenny Fowler Wheeler. My address is 7928 Sutterton Court in Raleigh. I will be brief. I value your time and recognize and appreciate your knowledge of growth and development. I have seen Roseville grow and change over the last 60-plus years. Getting our first stoplight, a new fire station, and Hardee's, they were all big deals. The property under consideration tonight was farmed by my grandfather, my father, and my brother continues to farm that land now. There are no young people in our family to continue the farming tradition. We are selling this land now, and we would like to be given the same opportunity as other landowners in our community. Many of the county residents who are vocally opposing this rezoning also live in subdivisions that used to be farmland. Woods Crossing, Lonely Oaks, and Netherfield were all once open farmland. These county residents want to control Roseville's growth and change because they live here now. We believe in free property rights. We have never opposed another person's right to develop their land, even as homes were built right up to our property line. The town of Roseville's comprehensive plan encourages all types of homes built in this area. Callis Falls across Rolesville Road from our property has already been approved for homes on lot as small as 6,000 square feet. What is being proposed fits with what the town has already approved as well as what the town has said they want now. There are adjoining landowners who agree that planned change should continue. I will leave copies of letters for you from neighboring property owners Sue Scarborough Tucker, Betsy Scarborough Wilkins, and the Moody family, all in support of change. I respectfully ask that you approve the rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that was the only person, so first speaker or first speaker against. Thank you. If you could state your name and address, please.
Good evening, Planning Board. My name is Gail Stallings, and my address is 1512 Rolesville Road, Wake Forest. And my comments are directed toward item number 5 on the agenda this evening. As you know, our group has stood before you as well as the mayor and the town commissioners in previous meetings. Just to let you know, we as a group are still opposed to the density of the proposed development by Hopper Communities as well as the minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. We know the developer has reduced the number of lots. However, just to reiterate, for those of us in opposition who live, for the most part, on the short section, which is 5/10 of a mile on Roseville Road, we will be surrounded by 847 units if this project gets approved. This does not take into account another mile away. We have Roseville High School, the Point at 951 units, and the proposed athletic complex. We are not opposed to development, nor are we opposed to the property owners selling their property, as we have been accused by some board members in the past. We are opposed to the zoning request by Hopper Communities, MA 20-01, to zone 91.39 acres located at 1801 Roseville Road and 6301 Mitchel Mill Road from Wake County R30 to Roseville R3-CZ. This zoning request will allow for higher density consisting of family single and townhomes. This is not congruous with the adjoining properties or existing developments such as Netherfield, Woods Crossing, Abington, Mitchell Meadow, to mention a few. It is not in the best interest of the community to add more traffic congestion to what we will already be experiencing from the Point, Callis Falls, Roseville High School, and the proposed athletic complex, all which are within 1.5 mile radius on a short section of a 2-lane road. According to redfin.com blog, home buyers and sellers are nearly twice as likely to oppose the building of dense housing in their neighborhood than they are to support it. 53% of them supported zoning policies that limit housing density near where they live. 27% supported policy that enable density. This is according to a June survey commissioned by Redfin over 3,000 U.S. residents who bought or sold a primary residence in the last year or who plan to buy in the next 12 months. Quote from the article, according to the chief economist Daryl Fairweather, people who don't want dense housing in their neighborhood often reason that they don't want to see the character of their neighborhood change. So as you can see, we're not alone in how we feel about density. As Mayor Kern stated in a recent meeting, this type of development needs to be where there's a transportation hub. Public transit is not available to Roseville Road or Mitchel Mill Road. In closing, I would also like to mention a fence was offered along with a type A buffer that adjoins the Woodley property, which is a working farm. However, during a phone conversation with developer Bill Harrell on August 12th, I was informed we would only get a fence if we gave them our full support. I would also like to say that the UDO does require a 25-foot buffer when adjoining farmland, and that can be found in 14.6.6. We ask for no changes for Hopper community to rezone the property from R30 to R3 ZC. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I believe we have another person. Thank you. If you could please state your name and address, and then you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Minda Sportsman. I'm at 3809 Arbor Rose Lane, Zebulon. I come to you to please deny the MA20-01 rezoning to the R3C7. The definition for medium density residential found in the comprehensive plan is predominantly single-family residential uses with portions of duplex, townhouse, or multifamily residential. The word predominantly means to a large extent. The plan submitted before you with this application has a ratio of single-family homes to townhomes at 60 to 40%. 40%, which represents the amount of townhomes, is almost half. The R3 plans for development are not consistent with the town's comprehensive plan and therefore should be denied. We are not opposed to similar development like the surrounding neighborhoods. And on behalf of many opposed, we have asked for you to deny this rezoning and encourage you to please look at bringing in commercial to our town and say no to this change. I am one of those that have had homes built up to my backyard on my property line, and I have never opposed development until this high density plan has been brought forward. But we must consider the impact of this particular builder's development of this land. And a reminder to please read the public comments submitted this evening. Thank you for your discernment on this situation as a whole.
Thank you. And was there one more? No, that's it. Okay, board, the floor is open for discussion, questions, comments.
Going back to one of the previous discussions about the connection with the Traviston Stub Road. I don't think I would personally be in favor of not making that connection. I think it is an opportunity to have some interconnectivity between neighborhoods. The residents may not see it as a benefit to their neighborhood, but I think having a second entrance on another way out could be a benefit if there were an accident at their entrance, or if there was an accident and then a fire inside their neighborhood, there would be another way to access it. We see a lot of stub roads There's usually a lot of opposition whenever those roads are extended, but they were put there for a reason, and that was for, you know, future connection.
I have to admit, that kind of was a concern of mine. You know, I understand the appeal of living on a dead-end street, or, you know, dead end for that little stub, or on a roundabout. And I can understand reluctance for both sides of the argument for not wanting to connect at this time, but, you know, one house fire, you know, near the entrance of that neighborhood, you know, is just thought that goes through my mind. Some other emergency and a second emergency pops up further in, if there isn't room for responders to get in a timely manner. Just logistically, I kind of would wonder how that would work anyway if they didn't connect as part of the development, but say they dedicated the right-of-way at some point in the future. Hey, that just wouldn't happen. It would be yards back.
Policy and the ordinance specifies if you dedicate a road right away, you got to build it unless it's a town
Yeah.
project.
I think that's what Danny was referring to earlier about a paper
Yeah.
street, not allowing that.
That's correct. So the request is to outlaw a connection, that is to outlaw a design of the eventual subdivision that takes into account making a connection to this neighboring subdivision. Danny can speak to the subdivision regulations as to how that would apply in a normal situation, but as to the building code, and I believe this is correct, so long as you are under 30 single-family detached lots, a single point of access is permitted under the building code. So that is why this is okay the way it is.
Okay.
And my understanding is the eventual subdivision plan for the proposed development will have 2 access points at least. Is it 2?
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
One on Roseville
So-
Road and one on Mitchell.
So there,
Mill.
at least pursuant to the building code, this is okay. Danny would have to speak as to the subdivision ordinance.
And let me clarify, I don't think it's the building code, I think it's the fire code.
Unfortunately, the fire code is a component of the
building
North
code.
Carolina building code.
But there's a specific fire code deals with a certain amount of access question.
14 to 15 homes in this little section of that is really, yes, of course. I think that's right.
I believe so.
Several times.
But no more than 22
Yeah.
or something.
No.
As far as the benefit goes to connecting the two, I see only Hopper communities really benefiting from that, that connection. I don't see the existing residents of Woods Crossing, I believe, right? Benefiting from that connection. So at this point, I'm in favor of listening to the residents that we have there rather than a future development that's coming in. If that's their wish, then I'd rather just keep that buffer there. My only question is, how is that buffer going to be? But that's just my opinion.
And let me clarify, it's Travis Woods, and Travis Court.
Court, yes.
Tavis Court, excuse me.
Tavis.
Tavis, excuse me, thank you, Donnie.
I drove that community a couple weeks back, and I saw the neighborhood for myself. So if the neighbors there, the residents there, don't wish to connect.
And for your record, I'm counting 13 lots that are in that.
13? Okay.
Mhm.
I think I refer back to, you know, the planning department's recommendation of making connections when they're feasible. You know, like I say, that road is installed as a stub road for the use of future connectivity. I think if it had been intended to be a permanent dead end, it would have had a cul-de-sac on it.
That's one item at hand. You know, I think we've talked about this for several months. I believe February come from 6,500 square foot lots up to now 10,000 square foot lots. Reduce the number of homes down to a much less density and homes that are going in there. So I think we're definitely getting a lot closer to making something that's going to work for everybody. The traffic analysis, I haven't seen the video of it, but Roseville Road is definitely the traffic on along Roseville Road from Mitchel Mill Road all the way through to Highway 98 is tremendous. That's a concern for the residents.
Fitting potential timelines together and how they could possibly interact if this site were to go forward and Callis Falls. Wasn't Callis Falls approved with requirements to evaluate traffic conditions at different stages through their development?
That's correct. And they are required, when they get through the process of building in that development, to eventually do the warrant study for the intersection. And they are the major contributor to the stoplight. Now, you also have the point with financial contribution based off of so many units to Mitchel Mill, to that stoplight. And in their proposal, they have also included a contribution towards the stoplight. So all three developments will be building, through the developers, upgrade of the intersection there.
That was kind of where I was headed with it.
And that's really when we discussed this with them, to be fair, because Callis is doing 100% unless nobody else comes forward, which we do have other developments come forward. If Callis starts moving faster and they put it in, then it would be a reimbursement later when they make their contribution, when they get to their threshold of housing units. On the point, and same thing with this development.
This threshold is 150 home.
That's what it put in there in the proposal, yes. And to contribute, I believe, $50,000. I believe that's what it said.
Curious to know, is that I noticed that 150 keeps popping up for green. It says Greenway Swimming Pool Dog Park, according to my notes. That's halfway through the build. Home sites, nearing 300 home sites. So the 150, is there any, I don't know if there's any reason for the 150. Is that just something that the builder, the developer, or the owner suggested? Why not have just the 100th, just so that these amenities can be assured to be put in before the completion? Those are my concerns. Those are things I want to make sure that they do make good on.
When you say completion, you're talking about the whole subdivision,
The whole
or the
subdivision.
first phase?
They keep bringing up the 150th building.
Right, and that is going to be the way we will enforce it.
Okay.
And it'll be based off the building permit, so they would have to have it in place before the 150th.
Before, okay, so that's how that's read.
Right,
Excellent.
right.
Okay.
So it's just it's a threshold point.
Of it.
The maximum to say you need to get this, have it on the ground and have it available.
Okay, good, that answers that question. The thoughts about the thoughts about the transportation hub being in that area, do we have plans for something like that?
You have, through the comprehensive transportation plan that's underway.
Okay.
That's underway, which you've had your presentation and been asked to give review comments. There is the recommendations of widening the road bigger than what it is being told to you today, to go to a 4-lane road with a narrow median. That was in the comp plan, and that's draft, that's not official yet, so therefore you don't see it until we go through the proper process of approving that plan. And that's moving forward with public comments eventually. Unfortunately, the 2002 plan is a little bit old, that's the way to say it. A lot of things have changed since then.
Yes.
Good. I'm good.
I don't have any further questions right now.
Any other?
If you want to discuss that before anymore, or?
I think I've expressed my opinion. I think I'm in favor of it being the connection being made personally.
But let's say from a fire safety standpoint, fire EMS, you know, it is another point of egress and ingress to get in and out of there and have a separate location. But let's say with 14 homes, you know, that's, sound like that's a request that the homeowners that are currently there now made a request to this developer.
And can we be clear on staff? Staff's recommendation was to encourage the connection of that.
That is the town policy to which staff would be recommending the connection. Again, it is a decision to whether you proceed and implement town policy, including when it gets to the governing body. The commissioners can decide not to do it. But that's, you know, our job is to keep the policy and keep it and recommend an implementation of it. And it's for the reasons already stated. It gives them another access to the property. If that intersection of Travis Wood is blocked on Roseville Road and there is a medical emergency or whatever emergency in there, you got to necessarily get the blockage out of the way. And it can be not as simple. It could be that you got a leaking fuel or something like that out there. I mean, there's different possibilities of what could cause a delay of safely getting through in there. But that's a discretion. It is a small number of units, but like Mr. Moss has stated, there was a street stub put in by the county. This is in the county's jurisdiction. It was platted by the county. Had they not wanted to make or had intended not to do that street stub, they would have done a cul-de-sac, just like they did on the opposite side. Most likely. I cannot always assume that, but that logically would be the way they would have ended with a turnaround. It's only 2 blocks of homes there. I don't know if there was an issue with the fire department being able to turn around when he gets down there with the equipment, because there's not a turnaround there.
I know that's probably, that's one of the intersections now to dead ends and stuff like this is what the reason that came out. So not having to turn around or having to back all the way out is a major problem.
And then there a distance there of the length of the road that you want to have those? I'm trying to remember the number.
Basic distance, I can't remember to that end of the.
250 or something like that?
Yeah, it's
Right.
Mr. Chairman, if it helps move the agenda item along, you could ask for 2 votes. One as to the application and a separate vote as to a recommendation regarding the proffered condition. That would provide additional information, perhaps, to the Board of Commissioners.
And we can do that. I appreciate bringing that up. That's, you know, if it's a town policy and that's what we do, and that's something we can look at too. So, I say there's a lot of just been so much animosity with this entire project that one little street, you know, that's why I was kind of thinking the residents around that street, if they were talking to the developers, but.
You want-
It would be a nice point of ingress, egress, absolutely, that'd be a great thing to do, but so that would be, you know, the developers and the homeowners there to discuss that as
Hey, we can ask the petitioner to, where is this request coming from?
And I just, before you get too far, while you're into deliberations, remind you that you did have written comments in advance of this meeting. You have copies at your desk. There's several there. Hopefully you've looked at them and read them. But just to make sure that we're acknowledging that they have been received. They were posted off the website, and you had copies here just to view, and your deliberations of those comments.
Mr. Chairman, not hearing any further discussion, I'd like to make a motion. I move that we recommend approval of MA 20-01 to the Town Board of Commissioners to rezone 1801 Roseville Road and 6301 Mitchel Mill Road from Wake County Residential 30 zoning district to Roseville Residential 3 conditional zoning district with conditions as presented. And I would like to note to include the connection to Tavis Wood stub in that. And this petition is reasonable in the public interest and consistent with the town's comprehensive plan and future land use map, which identifies this area as medium density residential.
We have a motion on the floor for recommendation for approval of MA 20-01. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
We have one opposed. Thank you. And you said if annexation is approved, this would be November 3rd meeting for the town board?
Technically, yes. This is the proceedings, got to get the annexation first. Under state law, when we annex part of the county jurisdiction and bring it into Rolesville, the town has to apply zoning classification to the annexation area if it's outside the town limits in the ETJ. That's what you're doing with this case.
Yes.
So it has to have some type of zoning classification if it's annexed. It's got to be zoned. We're not going to leave it unzoned. And the county zoning applies for up to 60 days after the effective date of the annexation. So we have to have it zoned well within 60 days of the annexation effective date.
No. Ask for it to be annexed in.
If you do not annex the property, then then the case is not going to move forward.
Long, quick comments for why you would or would not.
Why you would not?
Why would you?
Well, it's your decision of your growth and ability to expand.
Gotcha. And I understand that, I knew you were going to say that. Well, is there a reason why not to? Because I didn't have a lot of complaints about the annexation that Roseville has been doing.
It increases the burden upon public services.
That's the biggest one that I've heard. So what is the counter to that? Up to that financial burden. So is that just it? Does that make sense?
Well, basically, if you wish to grow and your growth is not occurring within your current limits, then, you've got to expand out. It's part of your expansion of your jurisdiction. And if you don't add properties to your town limits, you're not getting any tax base. Anything outside.
I just wanted to hear you say it.
Yeah,
okay?
but that's what I'm not arguing, and I'm trying to elaborate to get to your points you were looking for.
And Commissioner, please, ask questions. Things like that that really
I
need
hear
to
it
be
all the
considered.
time. I just wanted somebody here to answer that question.
Sure.
So, thank you.
But again, it's back to your policy of growth and tax base and expansion for the growth of the community. And, without, they need annexation in order to get public water and sewer services. By our merger agreement and town ordinance, you have to be in the town limits to get public water and sewer through the city of Raleigh.
You can only annex but so far outside of the town limits, correct? You can only go
You
but
can
so
go
far.
up to the 3-mile limit, subject to urban service agreement with the adjoining municipalities and the county. And this is within that area, for urban service area.
Moving on to preliminary subdivision plats for review. At this point, I do need to note that Commissioner Moss has a request, I believe.
Yes, I'd like to, as we get to the preserves at Jones Dairy, the two plans, I'd like to ask to be recused from those discussions. I'm the surveyor of record on those two projects.
So it'd be cases 20-04 and 20-02, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
When we come to them after the point. So can we entertain a motion now in the interest of getting it out of the way? In order for Mr. Moss to recuse himself, there has to be a motion, and we have to vote and approve on it.
Let's do it after we handle item number 6.
Okay. We can do that. Item number 6, case PR 20-01, the point phases 1 to 10 and 14 preliminary subdivision plat.
Thank you.
Julie, you have the floor.
All right, so number 6, the point. This is a request for a preliminary subdivision plat for 485 residential single-family lots located in 264 acres, zoned residential planned unit development, RNPUD. The August 20th, 2019 Planning Board Commissioners meeting, and they approved the special use permit and master plan for 581 single-family homes and 324 townhomes on 317 acres. The proposed preliminary subdivision plat is for the phases 1 through 10 and phase 14 and meets all the provisions of the Rolesville Unified Development Ordinance for preliminary plat review. Here we have a map of the area. The south of the Roseville bypass here is where we're looking at this property.
And Julie, point out to the high school, please.
All right, the high school is, you see the football field right here. So this is the high school area. You have Quarry Road right here. And you have the Super Street intersection here. This is a little bit blurry. In your packets, you had a better package. Trying to get all this information onto a PowerPoint slide is difficult. But this is the overall site plan for the preliminary plat. This is lot configurations, lot sizes, and your phasing lines. The Technical Review Committee has reviewed the proposed preliminary subdivision plat and recommends approval as presented. And the planning staff recommendation is to approve the preliminary subdivision plat as presented. Now, if you have questions about the site specifically, I do have the PDFs here. We can open the PDFs up and blow them up outside of the PowerPoint. That way you can talk about specific areas. And we do have the applicant here to speak. We've got the engineer record on deck to talk if you'd like to have any questions about the plat itself.
Where the phases are, phase 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so basically all this is phases 1 through 10 and phase 14. So phases 11, 12, and 13 are up here and are not included in this development.
Yeah, that's a separate section in those part. Basically, they're going to be developing from the Rolesville Road side and going back into the site. Obviously, you won't see the later phases further into the site until you build the front portion accordingly. Let me also point out that this is a residential PUD. There was a master plan, and this is consistent with the master plan. There's also road improvements across along the property line from the intersection of Quarry Road down to the lower point, which is down there beyond the last driveway to the high school. So there's basically road improvements all through that section there. There is the responsibility of traffic impact analysis to install a traffic light at Quarry Road included. All that's all been predetermined with the threshold and, of course, the warrants. Also, the traffic impact analysis and the conditions include evaluation of the impact of this project with the bypass, particularly with the turnarounds.
Right.
Quite a bit of discussion when that case came through about the high school and the peak demand at that time. And of course, the traffic impact analysis did include that as an option. And of course, it will be evaluated as it moves forward, and there's the clear authorization to, when the conditions get deteriorating, that we could trigger evaluation through DOT as well as their consulting engineer to move it forward, to evaluate, to help to alleviate. The main concern is you do not want traffic on the loop arounds to back up onto the inside lanes and people come up on it too quickly and then it backs up. So it's all covered with the traffic impact analysis and the special use permit conditions that was already spelled out. Just sharing information to let you know.
With the egresses, there are two lanes exiting the subdivision, one going left, one going right on Rolesville Road.
There will be intersection improvements that was identified from the traffic impact analysis with turn lanes as well as turn lanes out on Roseville, Young Street, out on Young Street. This is Young Street section.
Young Street.
Changes name at Fowler Road. That's how I always remember. Young Street changes to Roseville Road at Fowler Road.
So this was a RPUD, so we have commercial.
There's a commercial in the upper corner there, that big truck. Julie, point to the one
the
to
front,
just
yes.
above the round. That, well, that's not part of the PUD, but it could be.
Okay.
But that area right in there is the commercial site from the PUD that she's out circling.
Okay.
So the two ponds along Rolesville Road there, I guess the lower pond is going to be breached and the upper pond upgraded. I assume at some point the HOA would assume ownership and responsibility for that dam.
They would have the responsibility because it'll be part of the open space. Yes, sir. If you go out there, you'll know now that they're building the natural gas pipeline on this property.
Yep.
Nice big trench out there if you hadn't seen it. To put
Right,
that pipe in.
that's kind of a big ticket item right now. Not necessarily a big ticket, a lot of attention to dams around, Wake County. It's got a whole bunch of privately owned dams.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I notice this plan shows a Greenway Trail going to the bypass. Is this one of the cross-under locations at the bypass? where this trail
Yes.
is?
On the lower end down there, there is the existing tunnel. And it will, when we get to see the northern section, you'll see it carry over to the northern point.
Around here too.
Right, further north, as you get to the next section, you'll see that at a later date on the other side of the point.
So
You
is that-
probably won't see that till a
So
couple of months from now.
currently there's not a Greenway Trail on the north side.
There's no physical Greenway Trail, but there is a tunnel under the bypass, and they will be putting in their portion of the Greenway Trail that crosses through these, for this development. There also will be one that runs parallel to the road and come back into the subdivision that brings it up to Young Street.
Properties along the line of 401. What's the buffer?
There is what they call a thoroughfare buffer. It's
Okay.
included in the plan, and there'll be a landscaped, it's right, a good portion of
A
it's
wall or
open.
anything?
Huh?
Would it be a wall, retaining wall, or not?
No,
a
it'll be
retaining wall, but-
landscaping. It will be landscaping, but it doesn't require a wall. But it is quite substantial, bigger buffer. But it will be landscaped, and will be shown. It's shown on the landscaping plan here in general, but it will be very detailed on the construction drawings. And that trail will be parallel on that buffer too. It runs parallel to the road. There will be a Greenway Trail.
And there's no other entrances or exit on this, other than, as you said, Young Street? Correct? And I want to bring up something that board member Lawrence mentioned earlier about fire. It's just a lot of weaving into that community, just from what I can see.
There is street stubs to adjoining property. If you will kind of look at what you got in your availability, if you got iPad or whatever, there is street stubs in several locations to adjoining properties for continuation. There will be no access on the bypass. Everything would have to come in through Rolesville Road. So even with these streets to the properties to the south, as they develop going back in there, there will be the continuation of connectivity and additional routes connecting over to Rolesville Road in the future. However, that project's not doing that. It just extends street stubs to at least one per each track, so there would be one.
I believe these will have to cross at least one more property, if not two, eventually meet the Follow Road extension they're looking at.
Fowler Road's extension is further south, but it will not, these will eventually would connect to that future Fowler Road, yes.
Some properties over there.
But what is referred to as Fowler Road extension, which runs over to Jonesville Road, which also is part of our business park, the zone, a recommendation of the comp plan.
Any discussion? Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion. Like I said, we've talked, reviewed this, and, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to recommend approval for the preliminary subdivision plan for case PR 20-01, phases 1 through 10 and 14 with conditions.
We have a motion with a recommendation for approval. Is there a second?
I second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify with an aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Now, open the floor for a motion concerning Mr. Moss.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that Mr. Moss will be absent on the next item. Be excused.
Motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Didn't think so. Case PR 20-04, the Preserve at Jones Dairy Central preliminary subdivision plat. Julie, are you going to take the floor again on this one?
Yes, I'll introduce the case. Again, this is a preliminary subdivision plat for the review of a 255 residential single-family lots on 4 parcels for a total of 89.2 acres. This is a residential planned unit development, RP and UD. The Town Board of Commissioners on August 6, 2019 approved the special use permit and master plan for 261 single-family homes. The 173 townhomes will have a separate site plan approval. The proposed preliminary subdivision plat meets all the provisions of the Roseville Unified Development for preliminary plat review. Here is the map for your location and identification. This is Jones Dairy Road. This is Averette Road. And as you can see, this is the RNPUD. The last meeting, we had the south come before us. This is now the central. So this is the lot layout configuration. This is the overall site plan. Again, I have the complete site plan on a PDF separately. If we would like to zoom in or discuss things, this is just a visual representation of what was in your packet for the site plan. And there are some conditions that the TRC is recommending with their recommendation of approval. The City of Raleigh Public Utilities Department has comments that are included below. They do want sewer to be extended to all upstream adjacent properties. They would like the off-site sewer extensions and drainage easements to be recorded, and they have 2 conditions of approval for the CDs. These are all for the construction drawings and will be handled at construction drawing time. However, since these comments need to be handled at construction drawing and the preliminary plats match the construction drawings, we're attaching the conditions of the approval for the construction drawings to the preliminary plat to make sure that these recommendations are met at that time. So prior to approval of CDs, the project engineer has to submit the downstream sewer capacity study and identify the sewer pipes exceeding allowable capacity. And prior to the approval of CDs, the developer must contain documentation from Duke Energy for the rights of way and the water sewer utility crossing of that power easement. The Technical Review Committee has reviewed the proposed preliminary subdivision plat and recommends approval with conditions as presented. And the planning staff recommendation is to approve the preliminary subdivision plat with conditions as presented. And those conditions here again are from the City of Raleigh Public Utilities on the sewer extension, the utility easements, and the downstream sewer capacity, and documentation from Duke Energy for those encroachments.
And let me just clarify, these are conditions specifically came from the City of Raleigh through the utility policy and their guidelines, and of course, as part of our merger agreement, we were responsible to help see that those do get implemented. They did not feel that they were ready to do so ask the developer to go ahead and do these now with a preliminary plat. This is more getting into the construction details, but they asked that we specifically identify these conditions with this preliminary plat. So that's what we're doing. Just want to make it clear, but it is not saying it's not meeting the requirements. It's just that they have to meet those studies and impacts when they get their construction drawings to obtain their water and sewer permits that they issue at a later state.
And the engineer is here to answer any questions. He's on deck.
Questions?
Question in looking at the map, I know I've reviewed this subdivision numerous times also. Was there not, I thought there was gonna be a intersection from this central into south, like a 4-way intersection along Jonesville Road?
There is an intersection that matches to the other side. It's directly across.
That's gonna be the intersection not shown here on that as well?
Directly across from the south that you previously recommended.
That's gonna be, okay, I thought that, so just. doesn't
This will be
show up
road
on here.
improvements on the north side, widening of the road, etc. And the special use permit has a study of the intersection of Jones Dairy Road and Averette Road, Young Street intersection, which is a stop sign. There's a number of units identified on both of these cases, the north and the south, to which there would be the investigation of the warrant study with DOT. And once that warrant study's been approved, then there would be the scheduling of the construction.
I know I looked at this one as
And
well.
before we get too far along, go ahead and finish up the questions for Julie, please. We do have 2 people who wish to address the board besides the petitioners here. If you want to see them before we get into real serious deliberations.
I was gonna ask is what's the largest lot size? Something that we can,
The largest lot size and
We
the
can ask that of the
RMPUDI,
developer.
yeah, we can ask the developer.
okay.
If the petitioner could come in?
They were asking a question a minute ago. I don't know if you heard it because you were outside. They were asking a question a minute ago.
The lot sizes,
The
your
lot- what's the largest lot?
size, and smallest lot size that's in this community.
My name's Keith Gettle. I'm a civil engineer with CAA Engineers in Raleigh, and the lot size, the smallest would be 6,000, and the largest 13,682 square feet. 13,682.
This is our PUD.
This is a residential PUD with a master
Residential PUD.
plan.
I remember if I'm getting my subdivisions confused. Is this one is there any commercial mixed use?
Yes, there is a commercial in
that.
the original PUD, not in this plan, but in the original plan up there in the corner there, that excludes 3 lots, but it does kind of wrap around it. That white area is pretty much the commercial.
Yeah, where you see that box with the trees in it, that's the commercial lot.
Billy, will you
I
point-
see.
Okay, yeah, there, she'll point it out.
Thank you.
Any other questions? What do we have them in here?
All right, if there's not any more questions for the developer and the engineer, we do have 2 people who wish to speak. I hate to- Let's go out, no, let's go out this way. Yes, please, thank you. We're trying to follow it right there, that door.
Right here.
Sorry, Keith. Thank you. See ya. Following a pattern here.
Have a,
We learned from one meeting that not letting anybody go out that door because somebody will try to come in.
and we have 1 speaker,
Eddie?
2 speakers, sorry.
George, you can come in and have a seat. George, you can come in and have a seat.
Thank you. If you could state your name and address.
Yeah, my name is Betty Freeman. I live at the intersection of Jones Dairy and Averette Road, 524 Averette Road. There's enough congestion already, this intersection. When you build that many more houses that close to that intersection, nobody's going to be able to get out of one way or the other. If you put a stoplight at that intersection, the 3rd car is going to block my driveway. It's against the law to hold me hostage. And that's what you, in effect, will be doing.
Thank you.
My name is George Garcia. I'm co-owner of the property with my wife, 524 Averette Road. We have an ongoing concern regarding the traffic study that was done both for the South Preserve, Central, and North. I have talked to Secretary of Transportation down to the state engineer and the regional engineer. There are no new traffic studies that have been provided beyond the preliminary that was submitted quite a while ago. The gentleman, the regional engineer, checked with his staff, and Joey Hopkins checked with his staff, and they have not received any new updates to be reviewed. Yet, these projects are moving forward. There's an impact, and there's a collateral impact not only there but beyond that is not being considered. The comment applies to both of the 2 that are being reviewed, items 7 and 8, and I would like to enter that into the record, please. for your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This might be something that if we'd want to schedule maybe for a training session for a future date, but what exactly are the requirements? You know, when is a traffic impact analysis required, and what kinds of things are required for it?
Traffic impact analysis is required when you do have zoning cases or special use permits or subdivision and site plans, which this case, the traffic impact analysis was done part of the master plan for the PUD, which was a special use permit. And the study was coordinated with NCDOT. They do make recommendations in concurrence of that study once it's presented by their consultant engineer. Most particularly traffic, what they call congestion management, with NCDOT does an evaluation and either concurs or specifies other things. The recommendation of the consultant, which was Ramey Kemp, which was standing here just a second ago with the engineer, did identify road improvements, turn lanes, upgrades for both roads to get entrances of ingress and egress safely and have turn lanes along them, and also a threshold to do the warrant study for the traffic light at the intersection. So all that was addressed during the master plan approval for the of the PUD. And the threshold here, by the way, I forgot I left out the threshold. A threshold is 100 vehicles peak morning or afternoon, or 1,000 daily. That's the standard determines whether a TIA is required. If it's less than that, a TIA is not required. Now we do get, for the purpose of administration, even though it's not spelled out in the UDO, we are going to make it clear next time, we ask for a letter to determine, to verify how much before they develop, before they proceed to this point, etc., what's the numbers, and does it meet that threshold or not? And we get that from the consultant engineer, the traffic engineers.
I have a question. Does that answer your question though, in regards to a study, an educational piece to go with how the board is to understand the studies? I mean, Danny just gave a...
It's always been kind of a question. I know it's come up a few times over the years. And what threshold would trigger impact analysis? What are the requirements for it? You know, currency, kind of thing. And I know I can also remember at least one instance where a neighboring municipality had questions about a particular study that had been done.
Let me also point out that our threshold is more stricter than NCDOT. The NCDOT doesn't require traffic impact analysis until there's over 3,000 daily, and I don't think they have a peak requirement. So our standards are stricter, and there is developments that occur in Roseville that don't trigger it. Well, I'll take one example, is Greenway Beer and Wine across the road did not require, when we had a special use permit to put it in, to have a traffic impact analysis. The daycare behind CVS did not trigger the threshold, as an example. So there's some cases that don't do it, need to do it, but we do as a staff evaluate the safety and trying to find driveway access and make it as safe as possible with those plans. So it's not ignored, it's just that it don't go into the numbers of a more full-fledged study with consultants. Let me also point out on this project, because it was paid for, the study was, the traffic impact analysis was paid for by the developer in that time, and then we transitioned to a independent consultant review, which was reviewed by a different firm called Stantec, and concurred with what Ramey Kemp had proposed. So there was an independent review to verify. And then we're also moving now to where we do contract everything through the town. We don't allow developers to go get their own engineer, and then we got to go get our separate. Now, they pay for everything, but right now we're doing everything through the town.
It's just, this is one of those topics that can periodically appear to be just a mystery black box to a lot of people.
And his professional credentials, these are all valuable with a quasi-judicial hearing, which they provide testimony and provide evidence.
You mentioned both roads. You're referring to Averette Road and Jones Dairy Road? Is that what you said?
That's correct. With both entrances and the impact on those roads, as well as.
Would not justify, if I recall, we would not justify a stoplight at that intersection this time.
You have to wait until the warrants come in for DOT. DOT determines whether you can put a stoplight in or not. Not for a question of us to say, we need to put it in now. We have to pass the warrants of their criteria. So it's anticipated by the traffic engineers and DOT concurrence that by the, I apologize, I don't have the number in front of me, but there's a threshold that they're expecting that the warrants will be there to qualify, and DOT then will authorize the design and construction of a stoplight. And this stoplight will be in mass arms, metal. It will not be wooden rails. That's spelled out in the conditions.
That intersection is also part of the future plan to have Jones Dairy bypass connecting to Politown Road.
The extension of Jones Dairy Road over to Main Street, North Main Street. And that is being re-studied with the transportation plan.
That is stressing all these neighborhoods going along Averette Road, Jones Street, Roseville Road. It's just, I say it all the time, that entire corridor from Roseville Road to Highway 98 definitely is going to have a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
So this is administrative review. As we stated, Julie stated in staff recommendation, it does meet the UDO requirements. It does meet the special use permit. All the improvements required are identified on here, so they move forward with the preliminary. It'll be in the construction drawings. So staff recommendation is to approve the, for the planning board to recommend approval to the town board of commissioners the preliminary plat.
Questions, Mr. Chairman? I'd like to make a motion.
Stu?
I would make a motion to recommend the approval of the preliminary subdivision plat for case PR 20-04, preserve Jones Dairy Road Central with conditions as presented.
Motion on the floor for recommending approval of the preliminary subdivision plat for PR 20-04. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's done. Next one is case PR 20-02, the Preserve at Jones Dairy North preliminary subdivision plat. Lee, the con is yours once again.
Yes, thank you. So again, Preserve at Jones Dairy, this is now the north section, and it is for 136 residential single-family lots and 2 parcels for a total of, it is not 4,917 acres, it is 49.17 acres. I accidentally forgot the period there. It's correct on this screen. Again, at the August 6, 2019 Town Board of Commissioners meeting, they approved the special use permit and master plan for 141 single townhomes. Again, this request is for 136 residential single family lots, and the 63 townhomes will have a separate site plan for approval. Again, this preliminary subdivision plat meets all the provisions of the Unified Development Ordinance for preliminary plat review. This is the location map, so you can get your bearings. This is the north site here. We just talked about the central. Here's a portion of the south. So here's Jones Dairy Road, Averette Road, and this is the north.
point out, before you go too far, the brown area is Perry Farms subdivision, and the north of this site is Elizabeth Springs. It's under construction. That's up there. It does stub into, go back one more, Julie, to make it clear. It does stub into the Jones Dairy subdivision, Jones Dairy Road subdivision, that's in the Wake Forest jurisdiction. It's in the county. It's not in the town limits, but it is in their urban service area. And there is public water and sewer services for the city of Raleigh there.
You're welcome. So again, the lot layout, here we have the connections that we're discussing for, to Averette, to Perry Farms.
Oh, that's Elizabeth Springs.
That's Elizabeth Springs, this is Perry Farms here.
That's Perry Farms in Bond,
Yep.
yes. So this particular subdivision has got to come in through the existing connections. It does not front with any road access onto Averette Road. Access to Perry Farms, Elizabeth Springs, and Jones Dairy Road subdivision.
So again, City of Raleigh Public Utilities Department has comments. You've seen some of these comments before. They are conditions of approval that will be required at approval of the CDs. We're including them on the preliminary plat for consistency sake. The project engineer must submit a downstream sewer capacity study. That is the same comment. The same comment at the prior to approval of CDs, the developer must obtain documentation from Duke Energy for the encroachment agreements on the easements. And the third condition that you have not seen prior to this is prior to the approval of CDs, because this development is going through Elizabeth Springs to provide downstream sewer. If the downstream sewer outfall permitted with Elizabeth Springs is not constructed and accepted by Raleigh prior to the preserve at Jones Dairy North CDs being approved, then the preserve at Jones Dairy North will be responsible for including the design of the downstream sewer outfall and obtaining all necessary off-site sanitary sewer easements. So basically, if the Elizabeth Springs does not provide that sewer outfall for them to connect to, then they will be required to make that connection. The Technical Review Committee has reviewed the proposed preliminary subdivision plat and recommends approval with the conditions from City of Raleigh as presented, and planning staff recommends the approval of the preliminary subdivision plat with conditions as presented. And again, Keith is here to discuss if you have questions for Keith about the development. And I believe we have two people speaking. We do not have anybody speaking. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Basically, I understand that they said back in there that their statements would be duplicate of what they said previously, so they went ahead and left.
If there are no further questions, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. I make a motion to recommend approval for the preliminary subdivision plat for case PR 20-02, the Preserve and Jones Dairy Road North, with conditions as presented.
We have a motion on the floor for recommendation of approval of preliminary plat for PR 20-02. Is there a second? Motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. And I'll give Commissioner Marsh just a moment to return to his seat. Item 9, Planning Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First is discussion or just a consideration of scheduling a special meeting for review and recommendation on the proposed town center TC zoning text amendment. The reason I'm suggesting that is that it's quite extensive and quite a bit. And I think that it'd probably be best if we did a exclusive meeting on that item alone. This is the proposed text amendment that you've had some meetings with the consultant, with Kelly Kepler, with Kimberly Horn, and is involving with the sale of town property downtown on the corner of Young and Main. So that was the reason why I brought this up. I felt like that if we save this for a regular agenda item, that it may affect bog down, and you may be under pressure to. This will allow us to do a full venting discussion, get into the details, and get a full understanding. That's my suggestion. It is at the board's discretion whether you wish to do so. And then, of course, the next question is when to do it, is the next one.
If we do have a special meeting, I would ask for, a couple of potential dates to be thrown out for, tossed out for people to consider, especially since one commissioner is out tonight, and something like this, I really want to try to encourage full participation.
Is there any direction of a period of time or a week that you think is best? As the group?
Does any of the board
with
have
the members
anything that's
present?
absolutely out of the question?
Right, no Thursday nights.
Flexible. Show me where.
First of the week would be better for me.
So our
Third Monday of every month?
Our October meeting is the 26th of October. So, to avoid next week, that leaves the 12th, a Monday, which is Columbus Day, or the 19th.
Conflicts both of those evenings.
Okay, that's the reason why I'm throwing out the dates. So, town board meets on the 20th, the 13th, which is a Tuesday, or the 14th, which is a Wednesday.
Either the 13th or the 14th would work for me.
Tuesday's good for me. I believe it says the 13th.
13th is Tuesday, yes, sir. What we'll do is notify Mr. Sorts and see if he is available. If there's an issue, then we'll email everybody. I'll communicate back to you and see what we can work out. But we'll shoot for the 13th tentatively. And as such, we would have to call it a special meeting unless you, to continue it, we'd have to know our date certain, and we're not ready. So as chairman, under the rules of procedure, you can call a special meeting, and we will do the proper notification to the press and to the public that we're holding a special meeting.
Okay, what do I need to do to just...
We just say we're going, Mr. Chairman, you okay for us to call a special meeting? And you say yes.
Let's have a special meeting on the 13th, assuming Commissioner...
We will do that. All right. What do you want to do? It's up to you guys.
As somebody who works in an office in North Hills, 7 o'clock is a whole lot easier to make than 6.
7 o'clock on the 13th, tentatively, subject to one commissioner, planning board member is not present to confirm. Okay?
Over the Roseville next, kind of what Horn presented last week.
We will specifically be dealing with the town center text amendment to the current UDO. Now, yes, what we're putting in before to you now is going to carry over into the final UDO as well. That was the objective of, but we got to go ahead and get something now because the current regulations do have some conflicts. Okay? So it's the town center district overlay, and we're talking about the text amendment. There will be a zoning case that comes with that as well later. But we got to do the text amendment consideration and get it through the planning board first. And we'll explain more when we sit down in the session, the purpose and agreements and all this other stuff. Okay?
When are you kind of eyeballing for the town board to look at it, assuming?
Town board has forwarded to you and given you the deliberation time, and it's waiting for your recommendation. So it's not a scheduled date at this point.
Okay.
Best way to say it is give you time to deliberate, study it, make your recommendation, whatever it may be, and then the board will then receive it and then schedule the text amendment hearing. Obviously, a reasonable amount of time. I think we're going to be running to Christmas. Now, anything we do at this special meeting, we can carry over into the regular meeting next month if necessary to further wrap up, but if we don't do it that night, just, okay? If I may move on, if there's not any more questions on that. As you know, we are doing a UDO update, and discussed briefly in that joint meeting with last time earlier was the fact that we're setting up a steering committee to work more diligently on the UDO, which is town commissioners, planning board, and some members at large, plus the Chamber of Commerce and the Raleigh Wake County Home Builders Association. So it's an 11-member group, and we need 2 people willing to volunteer to participate from this body. There will probably be a lot of meetings. I would say we're looking at, I'm taking a guess of 16 meetings between now and February-ish, I think, because we're trying to meet a deadline of having this presented and adopted by the town by July 1st of 2021. Because of 160D, we have to do so. That's part of the UDO update as well. So the purpose of this participation of a planning board member is to drill in deep into the details, be a representative of everybody else. Whoever participates could do reports back to the planning board of what was discussed, some of the concerns, some of the questions, and so on like that. So you're kind of a representative of everybody else. But we are needing, request 2 planning board members to participate in that steering committee.
What are the anticipated meeting times?
That would be decided by the group. That would be decided by the group. But I think you could be meeting as much as twice a month, every other week. But again, I got to work that with the consultant, get the materials ready. But I think to meet the schedule, the steering committee is going to have to meet pretty often.
Anybody interested? Start off with that.
I think
Sure.
I think
Check my schedule. I have to check my schedule.
Schedules. That's a pretty aggressive schedule.
It is.
It'd probably be night meetings. But we could do day meetings. We don't know. We haven't worked it out. We got to see what the group wants to do, how you want to do it. There was even discussion of doing a day-long charrette type thing, but I'm worried on that is everybody's going to get burned out. When you get into details of an ordinance and discuss all these things, I think you're going to get mental burnout, I would call it, myself included. But it is going to require, in order for us to move along effectively, it needs to have some scrutiny and have input from the various different commissioners, planning board, and some developers and the other community to make sure that those questions get asked before we get it into the full body. And then you have to deliberate on it, and then before it gets to the public hearing.
I'm gonna ask, I didn't ask this of the board, but maybe if the scheduling is so tight for everyone's schedule, that they can alternate. I mean, you know what I mean? Like if you can make it one week and somebody else can make it another week, because you're gonna need that input, but I don't know if that's gonna be approved.
Well,
I'm
the,
just saying.
the only thing I'm gonna say on that is you alternate people. The problem is you're gonna have something discussed in the previous meeting that now comes up in this meeting as a follow-up. Because most likely you're gonna sit down and discuss something, you're gonna raise questions, it's gonna go back to the consultant to bring back forward something to you at the next meeting.
And that's true, but then if you have people who can't commit to it for
Right,
16
I understand,
sessions.
I understand. It is a very challenging task, and, but we do have to get moving on this. The COVID-19 event, this caused us to move back on this a little bit. We probably would have had the stakeholders earlier, but because of the limitations of meetings, trying to get together, to do those things effectively, you do need to be doing this, you do need to be here in person. Unfortunately, I don't think, we might try to do Zoom, but I'm not sure it'll be as effective as we're sitting here in this room, asking the questions, everybody's here and discussing together. I mean, that's really the bottom line. Now, we're gonna maintain social spacing.
It
And we
might
may
be easier to work
instead
out
of in
some.
here, we may be in the community center to get more spacing to accommodate everybody.
It might be easier for a few people to participate if they could participate by Zoom occasionally.
Again, this is something to discuss as the group as a whole, so, again, I think your issue is no different than everybody else. It probably would be the same issue. Our objective is to be productive. We got your time, we want to be productive with your time. So, you don't have to make your decision today, but give us some direction before soon, because we're going to have to get something going here. 'Cause this is September, and we probably need to meet probably the middle of October soon.
I remember at the recall Ruth was part of that, so it's gonna be part of the steering committee, but it brings up another question, where are we in the process of?
I'll let Commissioner Medley can report. I know that we have done applications. You're getting ready to do interviews for the planning board.
We're doing it this coming Thursday and Friday.
We have somebody by next month in place. I'm just,
Yes.
we are short one member, and I know Ruth was, if I recall, she was out, wanting to be part of this.
Ruth was very interested in participating.
Ruth did participate, and she was on the selection committee.
It was
And
the
you
two
were,
of
weren't
us.
you, Mark?
Correct.
Ruth and Mark dealing with selection of Kelly Kepler with Kimley Horn.
Hoping to have that filled this week, but we ran into a little glitch. So Thursday and Friday, we'll be interviewing them.
I just realized you're bringing a fresh member on here. They're going to be asking a lot of questions, no different than Mr. Cross over here as he came on board.
The good thing is whoever is involved in this, they are going to understand how this works at the end of it.
Well, our objective is to make sure all of you are, but the purpose of the two members is to start the what-if questions.
Yes.
Are we getting the right hits, the right points, the right statements, the right wording, the right standards as we move forward on this?
I would be willing to serve on that committee. My only concern is being able to make every single meeting, because it is aggressive, and I could do the best I could.
But that's understandable.
It's unlikely that anyone could commit to making every single meeting.
But if you're
That a yes?
if you are a member, you will get the materials, you will get the information. Even if you didn't attend, it would always take the welcome comments from you later, afterwards. So we'll work that out. I think we have to do that with a lot of people that are on this committee, the stakeholders group.
Is anybody else interested or need more time to think about it?
I would need more time. Just maybe by the end of the week.
Come on, Donnie, you got this.
I guess we can work on the schedule, right? Yeah, I'll second. I'll be the second member.
And then again, this is going to be discussed by the group as a whole to find the best time that fits everybody's schedule.
Absolutely. Okay.
Right. Sounds good.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Moss and Commissioner Moss?
Cross and Moss.
Moss and Cross. A good combination.
No,
All right,
I think
moving
great
ahead.
combination.
All right, moving ahead, thank you for bearing the pain with that, and we'll work diligently with that. The last is that you know that text amendment was adopted. I incorporated the text amendment in your agenda package as it was revised and approved by the board. I thought it might be valuable to you when you were dealing with the earlier deliberations to know what was the facts of the actual ordinance. As you recall, they did go to 10,000. You may not recall, but I'm going to state they went to 10,000 square foot minimum lot size. They increased the lot width and the side yard setbacks, and they reduced. They did not take out the restriction on percentage or allowance of townhomes in the acreage and multifamily. They actually reduced it from 20 to 15. And it encompasses both developments. So you can do 15 acres of townhomes, you can do 15 acres of apartments, cap, or you can do whatever combination in between, but the combined combination cannot exceed 15 acres. So if they want to do 5 acres of townhomes and 10 acres of apartments, they can do that, but then they have to meet the threshold. But 15 acres is the cap. Now, that's the big question is what if you have multiple districts and multiple sites and stuff like that. But it's within that development, it cannot be over 15 acres. Okay? And that's all I have. Oh, and then last is the development activity report. You have that in your packet as information. That's all we have, Mr. Chairman.
Item 10, Town Attorney's Report.
Mr. Chairman, I have no report, but I'm available to answer any questions.
Well, it's out there. Any questions for the Town Attorney? Not hearing any. Oh.
None at this time.
Yeah. Not hearing any. Item 11, any other business?
Danny, I've got to ask you if you've been able to make any progress on checking on my trees.
Trying to get that worked out. I'm going to get with town manager and JG a little bit more. I've shared the information with them, but yeah, and you've contacted me about going out and visit with them. I've done the same, so I'll get with them again and try to get it moving ahead.
It would really, I think, be ideal for all of us if I could go and show you, really.
Understood.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, right now, there is nothing in the UDO about that, correct? About the trees and the height and all that?
Correct.
So that's something, I guess.
Well, and it goes into a little bit more of the UDO rewrite that Town Board Member Pierce identified is whether it's appropriate to put it between the sidewalk and the curb because it causes the growth of the trees to go over the lanes. And also, with the growth of the lanes, depending on the species of the plant and the type of tree, it does interfere with the blocking of tall vehicles of hitting them or scraping them or et cetera, which is what Mr. Pierce was making a point, that it happens a lot here in Roseville on Main Street and Rogers Road was the two areas he identified. If you get into the lane, you're going to hit some of those limbs up there on particularly your box trucks and tall vehicles and so like that.
I had a printout last meeting, Donnie, that showed the supposedly supposed to have vertical clearance from back of curb.
He did, and that information did
straight up. So what has happened over the years, planting of trees between the curbing and the sidewalk has given us some undesirable consequences. So we need to take a look at it, in my opinion, and see what's happened. We didn't really think a whole lot about it years ago, and the story goes that years ago some lady bought some land in the community, and the first thing she did come to the town meeting and said we need to plant some trees beside the roads. Well, there was country roads then, and then everything has blossomed. I won't call the lady's name, but
all right. That's all right.
One other thing, I guess, as far as other business, let's say we are at a time now where we're getting a whole lot more people in the residents several emails, phone calls, text messages from a lot of different people. I'm sure other members on this board have too. A couple things were brought up, and just I'm not on social media. I don't really review it, but I had several of them brought to me, and that's just part of it. The opposition and trying to work with everybody, make everybody happy. That some of the comments are not very appealing, but people have the right to speak. So my thing is when we've been on the planning board for several years, and several of us have been here. Everybody, I guess, should know what the planning board is for. And if you look at it in the UDO, I brought this to just say that the planning board shall review and make recommendations to the legislative body upon the extent of location, design, of all public structures and facilities. And I believe the legislative body would be interpreted as the Board of Commissioners, correct? So then to go back to the Board of Commissioners in the UDO, and I'm just making a statement, that's all I'm bringing up here, but if you take the Board of Commissioners, they're to review, hear, consider, and approve or disapprove, and that's what we're here for, to bring it to the town board. And I don't know if a lot of people are very familiar with the TRC, the Technical Review Committee. I've been part of that for several years also, so there's actually another process in here that I don't think a lot of people realize what happens at the TRC meeting with, you have your city, public safety, DOT, there's a lot of players that come to the table with that. So I guess I'm just making a statement to clarify what the planning board, what our role in the development of the town of Roseville is versus what the Board of Commissioners' role is. Just I wanted to bring that up and see if anybody had any other comments or any other statements. But I just thought that would be something about that.
But just a reminder that statutorily, your planning board exists as an advisory board of citizens dealing with planning matters, and your purpose is exactly that, to make a recommendation. You do not make exclusive decisions unless we spell in something into the UDO that you do have the authority to make a decision. Right now, you're purely advisory, and then a lot of your recommendations go forward to the town board, who is the deciding body.
I believe the UDO, I of course didn't print it all. There's 190 pages, or might be 200. I can't remember. It's a thick packet, but I pulled a few of them out of there just to bring that up and just kind of clarify what this role is of this board.
And we will be clarifying even more with 160D of the planning board. And then, of course, there'll be probably some decisions of broadening or whatever, depending on that we go through the process of more involvement of the planning board in some of the decision-making process, particularly the minor stuff. But again, that's discretion of the town board to decide how much they want to allow the planning board to get involved. I can just say, just from the town commissioner side, as we grow, their meetings are going to get longer. And I know they're already...
I thought I was in a planning board meeting right now.
Yeah, you are.
Can I just say to what you just said, I think there's been a lot of ugliness that was thrown all of your ways in regards to decisions that were made. And I just think people are just not educated on what goes into the decisions you make. And it's unfortunate. That's why education is key for all of us, whether we're on the advisory board or town commissioner, so that, when we do make a decision, we can stand by it and explain it, because I know that became an issue where some of the people who spoke here and at the town board meeting, they were just downright ugly, accusatory, and it was not called for. So I think you all do a fantastic job, and my problem is learning when to keep my mouth shut and not tell somebody else off when they're saying something ugly about you. That's not the point. I get it. But it's really important that does not happen. But, people are going to be people, but I think you all do a fantastic job, and you do so many other things. I don't think people appreciate you, but I know I do. And I know I have a lot of education to do in regards to this advisory board. Again, I guess we all have to get thick skins, and I know I spoke with Mark about that, you just have to have and he has a thick skin, so let me just say that. So I just didn't like some of the things that were being
Well,
said.
and I stay off of social media.
Yeah, and that
That
helps
helps.
as well.
I'm not on there either.
And sometimes it still filters back to you if you're not on social
Okay,
media.
yeah, I've had emails, I've had texts and so on. I said-
Yeah,
I
so,
say he takes the good with the bad, but I said, you know, I just thought it'd be worth bringing that up. And, there's a lot of misinformation that went around on some of these recent, amendments and so on that I don't know where they came from, but anyways, I think that just stirred it up a little more.
it was terrible because there was something said about you at a meeting and you weren't even here. And they were like, oh, and he said, I'm like, oh my God, he wasn't even there that night. So like you said, it's the good with the bad, but sometimes that bad just really irritates me. But you guys are doing a fantastic job. So I thank you, just as a citizen of Roseville, knowing that this is what you all have been doing for a long time, and you do it well.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Cook.
Thank you. With that, floor is open for a motion on item number 12, adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion. Is there a
Second.
I second.
All those in favor, please signify with an eye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.